Welcome to 𝐒𝐻 TV, a division of 𝐒𝐻 Media and Broadcasting. "95% of our lives are run and created by our subconscious mind programming. Imagine if your subconscious mind is running many negative, disempowering, and self-sabotaging programs. How will that 95% of your life turn out to be? Would you like help to change your subconscious programming into something that works for you and set it to attract and create everything you desire? Join Tamara Oviatt in her show Metaprogramming and the Human Biocomputer here on 𝐒𝐻, where she will connect to the source energy and change your subconscious programming by deleting your negative belief systems. Tamara is the founder of Sacred Activations, a subconscious metaprogramming modality that rewires your brain and shifts hundreds of your belief systems so you can break away from lack, pain, and suffering and take control of what you want to create in your life. Tamara has helped hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, and she is here to help you too. It's not about fighting what you don't want. It's about creating what you do want. And the only way to do that is to change and upgrade your subconscious programming. Let Tamara help you create magic in your world. Tune in every week at Metaprogramming and the Human Biocomputer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 𝐒𝐻. I'm Ella Isakov, and I just want to always thank Tamara for allowing me to do this. You know, it's actually really wonderful to share. It's a great way to also grow and evolve, and I love the challenge. First, I'm one of the master practitioners and trainers. In fact, I have a level 1 practitioner training coming up beginning of October. And I also do these very popular Sacred Activations webinars. In fact, my fall series starts on September the 13th, but I also offer free Sacred Activations webinars around every 4 or 5 weeks. But one thing that's grown in popularity is my YouTube channel. And I have a show called Inside Healing, and a 10 to 15-minute episode comes out every Friday. And I run usually 2 Sacred Activations, and I do a little talk. So it's insight and healing, kind of what's happening right here in this 1-hour show. So thank you for either showing up live or watching these 𝐒𝐻, because what a great way to get insight and healing. So today is one of my, so it's actually a topic that I think about a lot, both. I'm really big I used to teach more yoga, but now I just teach a little bit of yoga because I'm so busy with my medical intuitive and energy healing practice through Sacred Activations. So I don't do as much teaching, but in both worlds, both the yoga world and the spiritual world, and actually in any world, what gets in many humans' way is their ego. So today's episode is called Egomania. I hope you guys like it. And here's the misconception about the ego. You actually need the ego. Yes. If you have an ego, it doesn't mean you are egotistic, you're selfish, you're self-centered. You actually need, if you don't have the ego, you actually won't get out of bed. You won't create. You won't want to do anything because you won't have the ego to give you that inspiration, that drive, that capacity to get up and move in not just a physical way of movement. So ego is very much needed. So if you ever say, kick the ego to the curb or quiet the mind, you actually cannot do either. And you actually need both the mind and the ego. What keeps the ego? Actually, let me define ego for you guys. First of all, the mind is super, super powerful. And when we are in trauma response, so, it always comes down to trauma and fears that create these illusions or our need to control, which, by the way, is a trauma response, trauma survival instinct, trauma survival response is that need to control everything. It's that fear of the unknown. It's that fear of, oh my God, are they going to get ahead of me? So it's that all that competition and jealousy is all the trauma response, guys. So if we tend to our own healing and clear some of that stuff from this lifetime, past lifetimes, from our family, even narcissism is actually a trauma response. In fact, narcissism is huge insecurity. And ego kind of moves you in that direction as well, which I will talk about, don't worry. But the human ego is high fidelity recorder of all the experience perceptions. Usually they would say first 6 years. I would argue the first 12 years. Yes, the 6 years is the most formidable years, malleable, but ultimately it's the first 12 years where you've had the greatest impact. But don't get fooled. Past life stuff also moves forward into this lifetime, especially when it's fear-based stuff, which is the ego. First, I'm going to talk about, well, let me just another definition of ego, and then I'm going to move into some kind of, I don't know, I think you might enjoy some of the information I'll be sharing today. So the ego is a force and personality responsible for feelings of identity and continuity in personal sense of identity. So when any time our identity, in especially our first 12 years, is jeopardized or is shifted, or, if you've had abuse or abandonment or whatever it is, overcritical parents, neglectful parents, all of that shapes our identity. So that's our consciousness, our thoughts of behaviors, feelings, memories, and also experiences. So our ego is formed from that. Okay. That's a really, really important piece. But now I want to first start with the unhealthy ego, because then I want to finish off on a great note of how can we use the ego and the mind for our highest good and for our power. And I have to say to you that having a healthy ego, it requires constant awareness and practice. Because ultimately, especially as a leader, as a teacher here in the energy world, in the yoga world, it's so easy to let the ego kind of get out of the way. So it does actually require that constant awareness, but ultimately awareness is a gift. When you're aware in each moment of each day, that's a gift. It's effort, but we're all worth the effort. And also the world is worth the effort, because when we are not in our ego, we can do so much good, so much great good. So I want to talk about what is an unhealthy ego. And yes, I know narcissism is such a huge buzzword, and spiritual ego is such a huge buzzword. I'll talk about the spiritual ego. Narcissism is really what you're going to hear right now with the unhealthy ego. But the spiritual bypassing is definitely also the ego, and I'll talk about that as well. So the first thing about our unhealthy ego is really it stems from our insecurity. Remember I said it's our personal sense of identity that stems from our experiences, our thoughts, our memories, our feelings, and behavior. So the first part of an unhealthy ego is somebody that enjoys putting other people down, almost likes to be the up level, likes to be on the pedestal, and sees everybody else kind of below them and them above. And they kind of keep people down there with their words, with their actions. Words and actions are really the main ways. And they feel better about themselves. And also competition with others. That's ego, guys. Gosh, that's why that's why you can see how this just kind of spreads to all parts of our life. Lack, our scarcity fears, that's all ego, because ego really keeps us in this illusion, in this very dark illusion that there isn't enough for me, that, oh my gosh, there isn't enough success, there isn't enough money, there aren't enough opportunities, there aren't enough clients, whatever you want to, however you want to spin it. It goes across the whole board. So whether you have scarcity fears, whether you have scarcity fears about money, or whether you feel competitive with the other teacher, all ego, all ego. So we fail to see the benefits of cooperation and, the benefits of working the number, spreading greater impact. For example, now that there's more teachers for sacred activations, we spread the healing worldwide. We spread this energy work, this modality that is so powerful, that's changed my life, and I know it's changed other people's lives. So we're able to have that greater impact because there's power in numbers. Then the second way of unhealthy ego is blames everyone around them. This is, by the way, I see this is kind of like the number one for narcissistic behavior. It's not me, it's them. Oh my gosh. Sorry, there's this joke about, oh, it's me, it's not you. Anyway, but this is the other way around. This is a not good way. So it blames those around you that doesn't take responsibility for their own action, insists that others have wronged them. And by the way, staying in victimhood is an unhealthy ego and narcissistic. Well, there's a lot of syllables in that. Struggle to apologize. So I don't know about you, but I grew up in a family that never apologized. And this is where we are like sponges. And actually, my background is Russian. I was actually born in Russia, but I've lived all over. But I've been told that Russians never apologize, and my family never. And this is where it also stems from trauma. Like, I come from a line of very powerful women that don't use any of their power because they're too, they live in victimhood, and they also live in who's coming to save me next. Damsel in distress, I will be running that. And by the way, this is also for men who feel like they want to save others. Third, power hungry. Gosh, don't we see that in the, I've gone to healers that were power hungry, and also yoga teachers. In fact, my foundation for my yoga world is Ashtanga. And Ashtanga is very power guru. Oh, that's my guru. That's all power hunger. That's all feeding that animal, that beast. And that's why I couldn't stay in Ashtanga world, although it created a really powerful foundation for me. You can look up Ashtanga. It's actually the foundation of all of yoga is Ashtanga or Iyengar. Okay, so power hungry, attracted to leadership roles because they want to attain power, and they feed off that power. They feed off controlling. You can do that. No, you can't do that. Do that. They feed off other people's weakness. They really abuse their power for their own greater good. It's almost like a power drunk, they call it. Oh my gosh, I've experienced this so much. Also, healers that do not heal themselves and get triggered. No healer should get triggered and show that in front of their client. You either work on your, I'm not gonna swear, don't worry, stuff, or you put it onto the bleachers and you tend to it later. You do not let it show up in your work when you're a teacher, when you're serving, okay? You don't unload that. Unable to empathize. But I actually want to talk about this because empathy is not really I'm going to give you some insight that might be different from what I'm going to say here. So unhealthy ego will fail to empathize with others. So if we hurt others, we don't realize their pain. We're unable to put ourselves into their shoes. But here's the thing. This is from my own wisdom from doing this work for a long while. You actually don't want to stay in empathy, especially if you're a healer. If you're an energy worker, you don't want to stay in empathy because literally it's pity, then it's empathy, then it's compassion. In empathy, you're going to feel drained. You're going to be just seeing, you're going to be able to put yourself into their shoes, especially if most healers have had a lot of trauma or have had trauma. So that's what led them even to this path. That also includes the yoga path. So it's so easy for us to feel what they're feeling. Well, that could be not only super draining, but you actually become susceptible to darker energies, darker thought forms. So you want to move towards compassion, which is really the most powerful space that you can hold. So I know I added a little extra part here. So we don't, unable to empathize is an unhealthy ego, but at the same time, you also want to move towards compassion. It makes it so you can show up better, and then you can stay on to your power, which means not give your power away and be susceptible. And hold more powerful space as well, by the way. And number 5th one is don't respect boundaries with time, with taking advantage of others. So as somebody knows that you can do something for them and you've offered, but then they want to take advantage, it's never enough, which is also being a narcissist. So those are the ways that an unhealthy ego shows up. And you can see that being a narcissist and unhealthy ego kind of are braided in together. Okay. Oh, yeah, I want to talk about spiritual bypassing, which is super, super, super important. And it's so popular. It's actually widespread. It's also the buzz of now that energy healing and all this work has gotten mainstream in yoga world, that it's so easy to get caught up in spiritual bypassing, which is really, we're not healing. We're staying the victim. We're staying with an unhealthy ego. So the use of spiritual ideas and practices to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and unresolved developmental things. Because, you know, when we've had trauma in our early life and we're not able to be vulnerable in our early life, by the way, if you know 𝐕𝐢𝐜 Maté, this is from him. If you're not able to be vulnerable in your early years because of trauma, abuse, neglect, then overcritical, then you stop growing. You cannot grow if you're not showing vulnerability in your formative years. So therefore, you don't develop the process. So I'm just going to go over spiritual bypassing quite quickly. Avoiding reality with what's happening in the world. So this is tricky because I also try and not watch the news too much. I try not to plug into too much into that world, but I do stay in the know. But I don't turn on the TV at 11. By the way, never put on TV at 11 o'clock, the news. You should not, but from 10 o'clock on, you should not be really anything overstimulating. Ixnay, if I'm allowed to say that. Okay. See themselves as the chosen one, deflecting conversations, thinking that they don't want to talk about. Thinking they're spiritual because they've done this, they've done that, so I'm spiritual. But the main thing I want to talk about is pretending that everything is love and light when it's not, or pretend to be happy when you're not. So I've actually, my dark night of the soul was like in 2008. And when you're in the dark night of the soul, you kind of surrender. So that's why it's actually the worst time of your life, but then it actually allows for you to really flourish if you allow yourself. So I did 2 Vipassana, actually 3 Vipassana. If you've heard of them, they're 10 days of silence. But people hide behind Vipassana. They go on these 10-day silent meditation retreats just to hide from their problems, and they think that they are growing. But guess what? It takes more than just silence. It takes also showing up. It takes also when you're meditating, because meditation is actually a great way to dissolve the unhealthy ego. It takes meditating and sitting with it and really allowing yourself to be with all those flaws. Well, actually, a lot of it's anger. A lot of it is you have to release that anger. It's actually key for the healing journey. Seeing also spiritual bypassing is when you're latched to a guru or a teacher. Don't put anyone on a pedestal. I think I'm running that today. Yeah, don't put anyone on a pedestal. I've always rebelled about this. I've always rebelled against this, even before I was even an energy healer, even in the yoga world. It's like, no, I'm going to be my own guru. No, don't tell me what I need to do with my body, because that's what Ashtanga does. They kind of tell you what you can do, what you can not do on a certain day or in your practice. And it's like, no. So maybe I was always a little bit defiant of that. But it's very enticing. It's very enticing to get a guru, to get that teacher, and to I've seen Amma. Do you guys know the hugging Saint Amma? Even then, I went 3 times to get a hug, and whoa, Like if that was not an emotional cleansing, I don't know what is. But I wouldn't spend a whole weekend, on her retreat and see her as my guru. But I do see the beauty and the power, and I do see how she's reincarnated. Like if you guys can experience, she's not touring anymore for hugs, I don't think, but she was, wow. But you can do that. I can still see her beauty and go to her without giving up my power and just like bowing down. I guess it's all a balance. I guess it's all a balance. Okay. Compassion is more understanding. I'm going by this message. Is more holding that space. It's more, compassion is more about understanding the human state, where we don't necessarily go into their pain, where we don't necessarily, even though we've been in that part, maybe we've had that same experience, but we don't put ourselves into their shoes. We stay within our own being, and we hold that powerful space. So I was just answering something in the chat. So now I want to talk about ego strength, and then I want to talk about the big word of spirituality, which is discernment. Such a big word. If you don't know what that word is, or if you're not using it, or if you're not utilizing it, I highly encourage you to do so, whether you're a healer or on a spiritual path, or whether you want to work on getting that balanced ego. So here's an ego strength definition. An individual's capacity to maintain his or her identity despite psychological pain, distress, turmoil, and conflict between the internal forces as well as the demands of reality. So this is why spiritual bypassing happens, because we're so heavy loaded with our turmoil and pain. And I've had a lot of it. I'm still on my healing path, so I'll vouch for that. But we don't, let me read this again, actually, excuse me. Yeah, we do, as well as the demands of reality. We don't let our identity be shaped by our turmoil or by the demands of reality. So really, it's about coming back to your authenticity. I'm actually running Home Sweet Home, which is actually one of my favorite sacred activations about coming back to your authenticity. Okay. So here is the healthy ego. Maybe you guys are waiting for that. Raises other people up. That there's enough to go around. I'll give you an example. Like when I teach I'm teaching my fourth level 1 sacred activations training in the fall. And I always say, just copy all the information from my website. You can do the same webinars. You can keep the titles. They can do the same. They can do the same thing. The same definition of sacred activations. Of course, the logo that comes from Tamara. Ultimately, we all bring our own light. Even if we teach exact same thing, exact same words, exact same activations, we will all bring our own unique individual light. Nobody can ever, ever, ever replicate that. By the way, nobody can ever, ever replicate you. So why the struggle to share? Why the struggle to let others in? And knowing that there's enough. That goes back to lack and scarcity, which I'll be running for you guys as well. Yeah, they don't wish to be above or better than anyone else. They encourage others to become the most brilliant person that they can be, thriving, because when they thrive, then there's more. Remember, there's power in numbers. Don't know judge or fear of inferiority. No competition. Oh, imagine a world with no competition. I mean, gosh, do they not kind of teach us that even in sports and schools and academics? It's a whole thing. It's also the system's fault. It's not just our parents or past lives. The systems, the conditioning have had their hands on us. Number 2, takes responsibility for their actions. This goes back to being able to say sorry, but also for letting go of some of the things that you've done. I'm going to be running ownership. I'm going to be running war inside. Because when we don't take ownership for our stuff, we create this more insecurities, more ego, because the ego feeds off the fear. Okay, takes responsibility for their actions, wrongdoings, and forthcomings with an apology if needed. And I've had to learn this because I come from a family that never said sorry for anything. Avoidance. So I have had to learn, and I have to say, you have to move through deep, deep discomfort. It feels like things are crawling on you when you have to say something that you've never been taught to do. But it's possible. And yes, you can handle the discomfort. Especially if it means you're going to be more authentic, you're going to be more in your power. Okay. So don't blame others or try to scapegoat their problems. They know that they know that their life is their making, ownership. I kind of like using this. The third of a healthy ego is able to lead others effectively. Someone who has healthy ego will be able to lead others without becoming drunk on power. I've already mentioned kind of this in the spiritual bypassing. Yeah. So it's not about me, it's about this work. But also at the same time acknowledging my efforts. It's this balance. It's this like seesaw, isn't it? That's what I think it is anyway. Working for the good of all and making wise decisions for the greater impact. Yeah. The fourth, this is where it says being able to empathize with others. And maybe I should have said it here, but I said it already. So a person with a balanced and healthy ego will be able to empathize easily and put themselves into other people's shoes. Whereas I personally believe, personal opinion alert, as one of my teachers says, you can empathize, you can hold powerful space, you can be empathetic without actually being in their shoes. I don't know, something to play around with. You can think about this talk. You can listen to it again and see how it lands for you inside of you. Generally care for those around them and offer support to their loved ones and without getting the ego involved. Yeah, so the energy is not ours, exactly. And the fifth one is respects and possesses healthy boundaries. And I will be running healthy boundaries, of course. Of course. Respect their own boundaries. So time is the one way that we don't always respect. Like if I'm busy, but somebody says, can you do this favor for me? And we shift things around. They don't compromise their boundaries and they respect their boundaries. So, oh, excuse me. The ego is really not the ego is your self-image. It's your social mask. It's your social mask that thrives on approval. It wants control and is sustained by power because it lives in fear. This is a quote by Deepak Chopra. Oh, really quickly though, I know we're going to go on a break. I want to talk about spiritual discernment, really, really important. Don't worry, I'm not going to swear, but have you guys ever heard of the ego bullshit detector? So it's a meditation where you can discern moment to moment, or when somebody says something or you hear something, you can kind of be aware and discern, put on your ego bullshit detector to see, is this the truth or is this false or is this an illusion? So there's three forms of discernment. First form of discernment is knowing that what is your samskar, your emotional triggers, knowing that this is not real, this is my pain, this is my trigger. So discerning reality from illusion, discerning the truth from the ego. So discernment is actually the key to kind of play around with your ego. So by the way, the emotional pain, some scars can be from this lifetime or the past lifetime. I will be doing a whole episode on some scars because it's a profoundly important topic. Then the next part, discernment, the second part, discernment, is knowing what are your thoughts and what are other beings or the systems or the collective's thoughts. So what thoughts are you picking up that you're thinking are yours when really it's not yours. Maybe it's your mom, your parents, or it's the systems. So discerning that. Okay, first noticing if it's your emotional pain, some scars, or if it's somebody else's, whose is it? And then kind of really understanding the quality of that being, of you, whoever it belongs to. Maybe it's somebody healthy. Maybe it's somebody that you needed to hear that, or use that thought or that inspiration, or something that you have to do. But discernment, guys, is key for the ego balance, and it's constant. You constantly discern. And one way to discern is, if you hear something, or are you expanding in your belly when you hear it, or you're asked to do something, you get a thought, or do you contract, expand or contract? So discernment is a key way to manage your ego, and actually really your self-awareness and your identity, so you stay true to you authentically. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some sacred activations.
𝐸 TV. Do you want to go deeper into sacred activations, which is a subconscious metaprogramming process? Tamara Oviatt is inviting you to visit her website at tamaraoviatt.com to sign up and get lifetime access to 3 free activations that you can listen to anytime you want or as often as you need. If you like what Tamara does and like to incorporate sacred activations into your life, she also offers live webinars, masterclasses, and practitioners training to further support your healing, manifestations, and expansion. There are hundreds of activations on her website that address different aspects of your life: money, health, relationships, intuitive abilities, and more. Head over to her website at tamaraoviatt.com and experience the magic of sacred activations. Thank you for listening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. 𝐸 Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, 𝐸 offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an 𝐸 magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on 𝐸 TV and broadcasting it across the extensive 𝐸 radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. 𝐸. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Here we are. All right. So now let's tackle the ego and clear the way for our authentic identity. So find a seated position or lying down, of course. Close your eyes if it feels right for you. And take a few expansive breaths. Let every exhale bring you further into your body. And on the next exhale, imagine you have cords or roots coming down from your feet, and you're going down, 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 down through all the layers of Mother Earth until you get to Mother Gaia, the heart of Mother Earth. Just feel the grounding, the healing energy already. And in your mind, while you're in Gaia, just really give yourself permission to fully receive, accept, So you can move towards your authenticity and your truth and your pure identity, because you have so much to offer when you have a healthy ego. All right, let's begin. I'm going to start with 0 to 7, our most formidable years, clearing any trauma that created the identity of survival. I'm actually going to stack that straight away with child's guilt and shame. So I'm going to run 0 to 7 and child's guilt and shame. I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Breathe expansively. This stuff can bring things up to the surface. And can you allow it to do so? Guilt and shame. And they're saying, it's always so much about the worth, knowing that you are worthy and your authentic essence is worthy to be seen. And it's so, 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 so needed. This shame keeps us hiding. Guilt keeps us hiding. Under a mask. Family line stops here. What fears and illusions have been passed on through transgenerational trauma? And can that stop with you? Oftentimes we're like a byproduct unless we create the change. Victimizer. Often when we're a victim, are you a victim or a victimizer or are you both? Starting to run victimizer. I'm going to stack that with damsel in distress. That goes for both men and women. That feeling that you need to be saved. Living in the illusion of fear and not taking ownership for your life. Damsel in distress. I'm just saying to stand in your power, in your truth, no matter what, anything, no matter what's happened in the past, really owning that, using that as lessons to expand further into your authenticity, into who you are. Polar opposites. Oftentimes, mental heaviness keeps us in the ego, in the fear, when we kind of let things spin over and over and over again, our fears, our insecurities, our jealousies, which is all insecurities and fears. So this will create new pathways of unconditional love, replacing negative pathways in the brain, uncluttering, good for clearing the software programs. I mean, this is all meta reprogramming, meta programming. Clearing the illusions. Run, release oaths, curses, contracts, and karmic ties and attachments. Clean slate, freeing from any mistakes made in all timelines, all existence, free of guilt. Here we go. Accept to receive. This is a biggie. Let it wash over you, through you. I'm going to kind of stack on that river of soul sacred activation. It's on the same line, releasing non-serving energies from your field. It's almost like they call it the fifth dimensional baptism. So cleansing you of anything that is keeping you in fear and illusion. Washing away all the energies we have connected to throughout our life, timelines, and even genetics. River of souls. And return to innocence is kind of on the same wavelength, but it's clearing all the programs, belief systems, even traumas that are controlling your ego. Here we go. Return to innocence, sacred activation. Ooh, it's a biggie. And they're saying return to your power. The next one is actually the same. Well, spiritual ego release. Spiritual ego release it's actually about finding that balance. So whether you feel like your ego is really high and you're living off that unhealthy ego, or whether it's low, so whether you need to be built up or find more of that balance in humbleness, and know that it's also about, if you're a healer, to know that you're always co-creating with God and not taking responsibility for healing or the client's results. I mean, that could also be the ego. So spiritual bypassing, spiritual ego release is running. Oh, I feel like this one was needed. Holy, just hit you guys all like a gust of wind. Hopefully you haven't fallen off your chair. That's how hard it is to maintain a balanced ego, a healthy identity. Competition, lack, and limitations. Sacred activation. Clearing that. You don't need to compete. There's enough to go around. When you are generous, it brings back to you twofold. When you share, it comes back to you tenfold. There are actually spiritual rules that speak about this more. And in fact, the number one thing for abundance is generosity, sharing. So clearing anything that's keeping you in lack, competition, or limitation of yourself, or limiting others to serve your ego. Spiritual bypassing. You see others or even God, use God or others as spiritual tools to avoid reality. So spiritual bypassing is really adding on to what I've said earlier, is using knowledge, wisdom, and tools against self to mask what's going on inside. And I'm actually going to stack that with war inside. Let's clear some of that. So spiritual bypassing and war inside, sacred activations. So I'm seeing shovels clearing your head, the brain part of things that are accumulated that are keeping you from your true identity. Fear of seeing the truth and dying to be me. I'm going to stack those two. Often when we get so far away from our truth and our true identity that we get sick. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Dying to be me was a big one for you guys, so we'll let that run for a bit. I always say it's not easy being human. Healthy boundaries. Universal life grid. Make your ego your amigo. Make your ego your friend. Can you walk the path with your ego by your side to really expand and rise and use your authentic identity? Recalibrating. Home sweet home. Home sweet home to your authentic essence. I'm just going to run a few sacred activations to help with the integration of the energies. It's really good. I'm seeing flowers in all of you guys. So there's like fresh flowers blossoming on you. And make your way back down to the heart of Mother Earth. Feel the grounding, the integrating, and the healing of Mother. I mean, she's always going to hold you and nurture you if you allow her. And then make your way up to your heart space and then take a few breaths expanding in your chest cavity. And take another deep breath in and begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. And when you are ready, you may open up your eyes. So the recording of this will go on TamaraOviet.com. That's also where you can find other webinars and trainings that Tamara offers. Stay hydrated, maybe go for a walk to ground yourself, and let this little hour bring you back to a balanced ego where you can be in your authentic identity. Your true power really is your essence, not anybody else's, whatever you've picked up from others, but yours. Much love. Bye for now.